welcome to another exciting episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, Ray Harkins. I may sound a little more excited than usual, and that is because I'm home. I am not living with my parents anymore, and that's a great thing. So for those of you who have been sending their well wishes and saying, I hope your house gets repaired soon, thank you. Thank you so much. And it feels so great. Anyways, that's not why you came here. You came here for the guest, and a very special guest he is. This is Valentino Arteaga from Of Mice and Men. Some of you may be saying, whoa, dude, that is a drastic departure from most of your guests, because Of Mice and Men is a massive band. When I say massive, like they're arguably, with the exception of a very old episode I have with Matt from Avenged Sevenfold, probably the biggest band that I've ever had on this podcast. But, and you know, may stylistically fall very far away from what you personally listen to if you're into punk and or hardcore. Of Mice and Men is a force to be reckoned with. They are obviously very popular, and I have known Tino, as many of his friends call him. I've known him for quite some time, and he was one of those people where, under no pretense of knowing me and like wanting to get something from me, he's always been like just a level, chill, cool guy. Like you could tell he was focused and driven on playing in a band. But anyways, I'm getting too far ahead of myself. More on that in a few moments. But let's get some formalities, some items of business, some items of discussion out and about. Visit 100wordspodcast.com. I would appreciate it. You can sign up for the email newsletter on the right side of the page, and you can also donate to the show if you are feeling that giving spirit. It's actually neat. I've had a few people donate recently and then almost immediately email me about something. It's cool because they're basically kind of, in some way, shape, or form paying me for my time. Or it's just like, oh, hey, I'm emailing you. I would like a response. I want a piece of advice or whatever. And, you don't need to do that in order to reach out to me, but I appreciate it when you do. I just, it gives me the warm fuzzies. So, because people often reach out to me about like, hey, I'm visiting Southern California. Like, can you recommend cool stuff to do? Sure, I can do that, of course. And especially if you're vegan, dude, I will point you to all the spots. I digress. Anyways, some cool things have been happening from people who have been reaching out to the show. I'm going to speak in a classroom soon enough because of this particular show to some high school students, which is awesome. I'm very excited about doing that. And then a special shout out to my homie, Dan Reed. He runs a business called Chicago Vegan Foods, who makes incredible vegan marshmallows and vegan cheese and a bunch of other vegan goodies. And he reached out to me because of this show. I never knew him. We have many mutual friends, but he just sent me an email saying, yo, dude, your show's awesome. And then I was able to meet him in real life because he was here in Southern California, and he got me into this amazing sort of product expo where they sample a million different kinds of natural and vegan and vegetarian foods, and I was in heaven. Thank you very much, Dan. But yeah, it's just fun. These are the connections that I love to make. So yes, basically email the show. That's what I'm trying to say. Let's focus on Tino. So he plays drums in the band Of Mice and Men. And, they're massive. Like, they can play to a lot of people. They just did a little tour with Linkin Park. No big deal. And a lot of people would look at a band like Of Mice and Men and be like, oh man, I don't know. It's kind of BS. It's kind of lame. And whether or not you like them musically at all, I want you to listen to this episode because I think it's very emblematic of what a lot of people like to do with bands that are playing music. It's very easy to paint these bands that are large and, kind of something that you might not immediately listen to. You may look at them in an issue of Alternative Press or on Warped Tour or wherever you're consuming your media. Look at them, look at a band like that and throw stones at them. Be like, oh, dude, just a total BS band. Like they didn't even work to do this or whatever you're thinking. I want to caution you from doing that because a lot of the times these bands that you feel may be, inauthentic, crappy, whatever adjective you want to put on it, have actually worked really hard to get there. And whether or not you identify with them musically, that doesn't matter. You can't take away the fact that it takes hard work to build this stuff. And Tino is exactly that sort of person. So listen to this interview. Whatever preconceived notions you may have of this particular band, just put those aside. and listen to this conversation for what it is, because I think it's really important stuff. I apologize for putting all these like caveats in here of like, oh, this is why you should listen to it. But like I said, I just know that people have immediate gut reactions to bands like Of Mice and Men. But put those aside. Just listen to this for what it is, of just a really hardworking dude who wants to play drums in a band. So anyways, thank you, Tino, for your time. And here is my discussion with him. And I will talk to you after the interview. Introduction to you.
Yeah, sure.
Kind of, becoming aware of you. I just remember, because we met when you were in Lower Definition, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. It was where Makoto was playing with you guys. I can't remember exactly where. It must have been like the alley in Fullerton
Yeah, somewhere, I'm sure, probably maybe the train station in Fullerton, or
sure, somewhere in that.
Somewhere in a local, small, sweaty venue.
Exactly.
That probably wasn't sold out.
Absolutely not.
But it was a crazy show.
Nonetheless. Yeah.
For sure.
But so I just remember you being extremely enthusiastic. Like, it was one of those things where it was like, because obviously that wasn't my first band, but so once you get a little older, you start to see certain archetypes where it's just like you're like, oh, that's like the over enthusiastic, that dude's gonna punish me. Or
I hope that's not what you were thinking.
Honestly, I didn't. I was actually going to correlate that to the fact that like it seemed like you were excited, but there was a genuineness about you, as opposed to like, I just want to know you because you'll probably do something for me.
Right, exactly.
Because I think a lot of people, especially when you're younger, you fall into that where it's just like, oh, I got to meet that guy because they can do something for me.
I need to meet that guy. Instead of like, oh man, that'd be cool to meet that guy and like just say, hey, I'm stoked on your band.
Right.
This is a sick show.
Right.
I'm pumped, which I'm sure I still do that to this day to every band that we tour with or have toured with that I'm, stoked about. So it's no surprise to me that you heard that. And I'm glad that it wasn't the punishing view, which I'm sure I was, like we were all young once and around people that got us stoked. And, you know, sometimes we didn't know how to act, but I mean, even still, I could be punishing.
Right. Well, but I think even though that may be overwhelming for some people, I think it is one of those things where it is once that kind of fades away with age,
right?
As long as you don't lose the enthusiasm, because I think that's what puts people in a place of becoming jaded or
right,
over
of course.
It. And it's like if you don't have that core enthusiasm, you're just like, well, dude, like this isn't going to last you.
Yeah, there's no spark left. But to me, that's kind of like my spark. Why I'm still stoked about music and like meeting people and doing interviews like this is like I'm stoked,
right.
And it's a genuine feeling of being able to talk about the things I want to talk about with somebody that I meet at a show or something like that, or at a a music convention or
right,
on the street or anywhere.
Yeah.
So
it's sad because I'm sure that you've obviously seen people who it's like, obviously when you get to the level of where you're at now, where you're obviously, I mean, the band is your income, the band becomes a business, touring lifestyle. You're gone 250 days out of the year.
Yeah,
and a lot of people slip into the oh, this is my job, it's awesome, but oh man, it starts to chip away that enthusiasm.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I guess I could see that. For me, it's what I've always, wanted to do, as far as I always knew I was going to be a musician from when I first started playing music. I didn't know how or, in what aspect, because it wasn't even until middle school that I kind of got, or later elementary and middle school is when I got into rock music and heavier stuff. And then ultimately my life took that turn down that road. But I always knew that I wanted to do something in music, and I feel like I can still definitely be stoked about it every day because I'm finally at that point, and it's like, damn, cool. All right. So now I just keep being the same person that I am that has brought me to this place.
Right.
And continue on and upward and for many more years.
Right. Well, backing up, you were alluding to. So you were born and raised in San Diego,
Yep.
Like you mentioned Chula Vista. Was that where you were primarily raised in?
Yeah. My family and I lived in Imperial Beach for the first couple years of my life.
Okay.
And then we moved to inland Chula Vista so I could move to a better school district and not be raised kind of by the beach with the craziness and all that.
Sure.
So they kind of opted for a little more of the suburban outskirts. And yeah, so then school and music and all those things came after.
Sure. What was your like your family structure like? Like brothers and sisters, mother and father in the house?
Yeah, mother and father. Dad played music a bunch, but nothing like, he was always like a guitar fiddler, so he would just fiddle with the guitar and stuff like that. And my mom always loved hearing the guitar and having music, so they have a strong relationship. They're still together today.
Oh, that's awesome.
And when my brother was born when I was like 8, and then him and I, like, he kind of took after me with the music, and then we just kind of grew up playing music together and doing stuff like that.
What did your parents do for a living down there?
My mom was a dental hygienist, and my dad worked at and still works for Union Bank.
Okay.
And I think he's gone through a ton of different jobs through
sure.
there, but now he's
been with the company.
Yeah, he's been with the company like almost 30 years now. Wow. So from being a teller to everything like that. So it was kind of like they were kind of working a lot growing up, but I don't feel like I was ever like neglected in that sense. You know, like they always try to cultivate the things that I like to do, which I'm very appreciative of now. Because at the time I was like, oh man, you know, I don't want to practice this. I don't want to do that. And all the things that they were like, no, you have to do it. You should do it because you're going to appreciate it later. I'm like, damn, you were right. You're right. So as I get older, I love coming to those realizations and being like, damn, you know, like,
I see why you did that.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, hopefully I'll be able to pass that along to my future generations as well.
Right.
But I felt like that was pretty important for my upraising, because they never really like censored my music. They never really...
You were pretty free.
Yeah, exactly. For the most part. I mean, as long as I got good grades growing up, I could play music and I could do the things that I wanted to do.
I think that's a really important point, because I think a lot of people, especially from, you know, the tumultuous relationship that most kids have once they start to get into their teenage years.
Right.
But like that level of trust is so implicit, where you're like, as long as you, child, hold up your end of the bargain.
Exactly.
I'm not going to come down on you.
Right.
And it's like, I know I had a very similar experience where it was like, then you started to test like, all right, well, what is that boundary? Like, what is going to get you bummed out? Oh, that'll get you bummed out. Okay, I won't do that.
Right. Yeah.
But I can.
Exactly.
It's finding its own level, so to speak.
Right.
And so you know, what kind of kid did you find yourself being as you were growing up? Were you like super into sports? Were you like an introvert? Where did you don't strike me as an introvert.
No, definitely not. I don't know. I was always playing outside and always like going over to my friend's house. Like I said, from a young age, I was playing music. So I kind of gravitated towards like the neighborhood friends that did play music. So like I had a friend who was a drummer, and I would go over and play drums at his house. And his dad was a professional world touring percussionist. And so he had just had musical instruments all over his house. So I was like, this is awesome.
This is a playground. Yeah.
And then everything from like video games kind of, but it was always music for me, I guess.
Yeah.
I could never really find focus in anything else but, you know, playing music. I tried sports. Not really. The most sports I probably did was like marching band. It was always just like listening to music and playing music, and then going and skateboarding. You know, I started skating when I was probably like 8, and then did that from, you know, until high school. You know, everyone gets around.
Of course.
Everyone who listens to punk music or metal music got around on a skateboard at one point or another.
Absolutely.
And I never really took that too seriously, but I used to like to go to skate demos, and new skate parks in San Diego would open up all the time as I was growing up.
Right.
So that was cool. My parents would take me to that, and I'd get to go skate those and do stuff like that. And that would go hand in hand with punk shows, and like, you know, there'd be a punk band playing or something. I'm like, man, that's so sick.
Yeah.
I'm skating this bowl. Not, you know, I was never very good, but I felt like I always
you appreciated the culture.
Exactly.
It was interesting.
Yeah, that was definitely a big part of my growing up, is, you know, skating and punk and surfing. And although I never surfed, but that just kind of came hand in the boarding. The boarding sports was the things that I like to watch on TV and X Games, and
I think it's such a it's an important point, because I think so many people in Southern California, where it's like, you know, so many other places across the country that obviously, I mean, it's easy now to connect, you know, action sports and that, like aggressive music,
right.
But it's like at one point that was different. You know, a person in New York City would be like, wait, you surf and you listen to like, or whatever.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It was a little harder connection to make, but that was like, for us, that was so like, oh, even if I don't do it, I'm aware of it. Right. I can like attempt to and be horrible at it, but I still like am into it, you know?
Right, definitely.
And so what, culturally speaking, what's your background?
My father's side of the family is Peruvian.
Okay.
So he's from, he's from Lima, Peru. My whole Peruvian side of the family lives out there. And the way that him and my mom met they were tour guides, both tour guides in South America. My mom is from San Diego and then lived in Oregon for a long time. So they met while they were both tour guides in South America, and they met on one tour and they dated, went on 3 dates in between the next tour whenever they could. Yeah. And then were married like less than a month after they had met or something like that.
Whirlwind romance.
Yeah. And it's funny because now my life is kind of not taking shape like that, but it's no wonder why I love traveling so much and I love going and visiting places. And I see so many similarities in myself and my parents just because of where they were in their lives at that point.
Sure.
So,
you could look at it and be like, all right, so, this is where they were in their late 20s. Yeah. And like, that's kind of what
that's kind of exactly what I'm doing too. And,
that's cool.
Yeah. So my dad's family is from Peru, and his only life that he knew was out there. So then when he met my mom, they were about to have me, and then they moved to San Diego.
Okay.
Where they were both, my mom was trying to tour because of making money to be able to support that. But she did that until she absolutely couldn't tour anymore. Mm-hmm. So then she went home to be with her family for the last, couple months of her pregnancy. And then my dad almost didn't make it for my birth because he was still on tour. And so he made it like hours before I was born, which was
stressful.
On Valentine's Day in all the way back in 1986.
Incredible.
So right around this time that year, he was probably on a flight trying to get to the US, to see me being born. And then ultimately from that point, they both quit touring right then and started their life.
Right. Realizing that we got to be responsible.
Exactly.
Right.
So it was right then that we moved to a little like cottage, 1-bedroom, or like a studio. Yeah. 1 bed, like whatever, cottage, like by the beach in Imperial Beach. And the rest is history.
Right. The only reason I ask is because, from San Diego, there's obviously more of a cultural, you're not just a white dude playing in a band.
There's a lot more like Hispanic influence and stuff. And being from Chula Vista, all my homies a lot of them were from Mexico. And we were no stranger to going down to TJ at any given point for anything. Because
of course
it's 2 exits away.
Totally.
It's so easy to get there. And because my parents were travelers, I had a passport at a very young age too, and we did a lot of traveling when I was growing up too.
Okay.
So
you were used to that.
Right. Seeing the
atmosphere.
Cultural awareness of everything, like kind of anywhere that I would go.
Yeah, no, and that's what's it's cool because anytime obviously you see someone who isn't like I alluded to before, where it's just like, oh, another white dude in a band. Like honest, like that experience is very it's been done. And so it's like anytime you see
a little tired.
It's honestly, and so it's like anytime you see, and especially within the context of like whatever punk, hardcore, independent music, traditionally speaking, it's like, you're going to see at any given show, whatever, 80 to 90% is either, white males or females. And so it's like anytime you see a different person, it's like you had to work a little bit harder for that. I mean, not like there's obviously blatant racism that happens within our community, but then there's less of a predilection for you to be like, oh, I want to know what's up with that.
Yeah. I always felt like the music, as far as anything culturally, for me, the music always spoke louder than anything else. It didn't matter what kind of, or what color your skin was or what your ethnicity was. And that was something that I really loved about, later in life, getting into the hardcore scene and all that, realizing the unity in it and like the bringing of all different cultures, everyone coming together and playing in a band. And it's like, whoa, dude, there's like all these different types of musicians from, every point in the globe. Like, even in America. And it was cool to see the diversity as, later as you start to not listen so much to mainstream or, you start to get into what you start to get into.
You dive deeper.
Exactly. Diving deeper.
You starting to get introduced to whatever independent music, punk, hardcore, metal, whatever you want to define it as? Did that start to happen like in early high school where you started to really like kind of like go to shows and stuff like that?
It was definitely more like I said, like in 6th grade.
Yeah.
I was like pretty much into like Blink-182 and Green Day and stuff like that before.
Mm-hmm.
And then my friend showed me the Korn self-titled tape, and I was like, whoa,
heaviest thing ever.
This is insane. And that same week, my friend's sister picked us up from school, and she was blasting the most insane thing I had ever heard, which was Slipknot Surfacing.
Yeah.
Which is the fuck it all, fuck this. And I was like, my virgin ears, what is this? I need more. Are they really cussing that much? This is, and
this is amazing.
Because at the time I had heard like a couple of songs with like cursing or whatever. Just, I don't know.
It was super edgy.
Yeah. And it was like, wow, they are pissed.
Right.
And that's a feeling that I've, I can never really connect with because I'm a more outgoing, like happy. I'm always whistling. I'm always like,
you're a positive guy.
Yeah, a positive guy. But I feel like that's such a yin to my, or the yang to my yin or whatever.
Yeah.
That it's always been such a huge influence on me because I just love that it's kind of far removed from the person that I am. So it's like, I can be somebody else when I listen to that music or when I play that music or something like that. It's almost like it's a different persona.
Sure.
So like, so I heard those bands and I was like, man, there's gotta be more out there. So then I'd pick my friend's sister's brain for like other bands. And then that's how I started finding out about like, and then I go look at all the links section. And that's how I kind of like developed this knowledge of underground bands that were from, all these different places, because there was this whole world in heavy music that I never even knew existed, So that was a cool like turning point. I remember that in 6th grade, and then 6th grade camp, we were listening to that Korn tape nonstop.
Right.
Like, it was crazy. And then going into middle school, all of my friends and I, like, we all kind of like started playing band instruments. Like we were all like, all right, you're going to learn the guitar and I'll be the bass player and I'll be the drummer. And it was like,
everyone was pairing up. Yeah.
And it was like, kind of like we're going to make music like this. And it was, it didn't come until a long way later that.
Oh, of course. You have to be terrible.
Yeah.
For a long time.
So like, then after that, then we would do like talent shows and.
Oh, nice. The high school talent shows?
Oh yeah, of course. And I never felt cooler than playing Brain Stew and Smells Like Teen Spirit medley, plus the 30-second of the original instrumental that we had prepared. And,
dude, those moments are so huge where you get, because you feel cool. Yeah. Most of the time, your fellow students look at you like, dude, this is some weird shit. Like,
yeah, for sure. They were not used to seeing that, but it was cool. And that's kind of like, then after once those kind of things happen and like performing and then hearing about the coffee shop show and, like the older people in the school, like, oh yeah, my band's doing this, my band's doing that. Mm-hmm. So then I was like, well, I got to hang with those guys, because those guys are in bands, playing shows,
right?
They're
things. Doing what I want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then
were you at that time, were you doing drums? Had you been assigned to drums, or were you?
No, I was doing guitar.
Okay.
And guitar, singing, and like backup vocals and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so I had like my own band that was like a pop punk band
ish. Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah.
And
please tell me you had a terrible name.
Well, yeah. At first we were called All Out, and then we changed our name to Elite Mohican, which I loved.
That's funny. I like that. Yeah, that's a good,
because I was like all about mohawks and stuff like that. Still am.
Yeah.
And
that hasn't changed.
Yep. And okay. Yeah, so then
was that what did you start to play shows with that?
Yeah, we did some shows. Like I booked us a festival show with Rufio one time.
Oh yeah.
At the Xanth in San Diego, and I would always just try and hit up anywhere, because I knew from talking to my friends that were already in bands, I was like, well, I already know where all these bands are playing, so I'm gonna call those people and be like, hey, I've got a band, and we would fit perfect on that show.
So because it's something that, I was going to bring up later, but typically speaking, like drummers of bands are usually like, well, first of all, like never spoken to,
right?
Like you just sit back there, do your thing. It's fine. But so that's why I find it cool that you are such a visual presence within the context of Mice and Men,
right?
Where it's
Thank
like,
you.
People talk to you,
right?
And you're not just like this guy. Like, yeah, he's cool,
the do nothing drummer.
Oh, absolutely. So it's cool to hear that you were kind of like this whatever go-getter / businessman
for sure. Yeah, I still am. It's always kind of been the person that I was. Is, you know, my parents taught me that if you want something, you got to get it. Nobody else is going to do any of the work for you.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, all right, well, we sound good enough in my parents' living room and in the garage or, you know, wherever.
Right.
So let's go and play a show in front of people, you know, at a coffee shop or do this.
Right.
So then I was calling up coffee shops and being like, yo, can we play your
Yeah.
open mic night or whatever?
Sure.
And then that's kind of like, after doing that, I kind of developed the balls or something, I guess or just the knowledge and know-how.
The confidence maybe.
Yeah. There it is. Like the confidence to be able to approach a promoter or something like that and try and market the music that I was creating in order for them to book a show or to listen to my band or to do something, you know,
right.
like,
To care at all.
Exactly. To give a care. Exactly.
Right.
So
then, would you define like what you did in Lower Definition to be kind of the first time that you sort of took a national stage, so to speak, in regards to like touring? And
Right. Yeah. So we were a garage band that had essentially just exactly like how I said, as soon as we all felt like our songs were good enough for an audience, you know, we would pack the garage with 10 people.
And this was post high school, right? This was like
no. This was in 2002.
Okay.
So I was this was when I was about a sophomore in high school.
Oh, okay, got it.
So that's when I jumped over to drums because I'd been playing guitar for a while and I was playing bass in Lower Definition. This is the early installment of the band before like we were really even announced or a national touring act or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was playing bass and singing. And we had a drummer who was a close friend of ours, but I found myself more involved in the drum creating process of like, you know, this beat needs to be like this and this stuff needs to be like that. And I think that probably came from my knowledge of music, just kind of all around. And
yeah, you also strike me too as a person, not to interrupt your thought, but the idea that, cause you know, referring to yourself as a musician, like, I mean, you are within every right to refer to yourself as that, but the concept of usually when you're trying to put together your first bands and stuff like that, you're obviously awful. You don't, musicianship isn't obviously thought of, but it sounds like you were, even though you might not have had the skill to accomplish what you were doing, you were like, that was already soaking into your head of like, I'm picking all this up for later use.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so then I was like, you know, we kind of like stopped practicing for a while and then restarted the band up where I was on drums because I had bought a kit a year before. So the drummer in the first band that I ever started would have a drum set. So I was like, I was the kid and I was like, you know,
if you're not going to get it, I'll get.
Yeah, exactly. Cause I was like, well, this music's going to happen regardless. And that's another instrument that I want to learn. Cause I had always played on my neighbor's kit. So I was like, man, it's so cool. Like I want a drum set. So went and bought that drum set, but never used it. Cause the drummer of the first band that I had started was the drummer.
Right.
So he did that all. And then when we took the break to reform Lower Definition and be what it was when we started touring, I played drums a lot and then kind of got good enough to play the songs that we had already written. And I was like, all right, throw me in, let's just do this. You know, like I'm having all these ideas anyway. So then we started booking shows outside of our like local coffee shop and playing places like the Epicenter in San Diego and Soma and Che Cafe and Ground Zero. And
probably when the scene was around at that time.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the scene and all those places too.
Yeah.
And just kind of like trying to get out and play for a local audience and make flyers every weekend.
You were doing the hustle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That kind of started to take place, like you said. Was sophomore years around like the sort of quote unquote relaunch of Lower Definition, or was that more later in?
I mean, that was I feel like that's kind of, it was right there in 2002 was when we felt like we started the band.
Okay.
And that's when we started playing locally.
Got it.
We recorded full length, quote unquote. You can't see the bunny ears, but quote unquote, full length in my bedroom with my 4-track recording, or my dad's 4-track Boss recorder that's the size of a freaking MacBook,
right,
or 5 MacBooks stacked on top of each other. And so set up mics in my room and I self-produced that, and by no means was that good, but it was, it was a bedroom recording. It was that's where it was. It was and it was all pretty much done on that with very, very basic computer stuff. And
Right.
it sounds very dated, and it's really funny to listen back to that stuff, which
I'm sure.
I don't know if you can even find that on the internet anymore, but yeah. And so then that's when we had a demo, and we gave it out at school, and spent hours and hours, burning the CDs and stuff.
Of course.
Handing them out at school and promoting shows of, like just playing around San Diego.
Were your parents excited to obviously like see you, do that sort of stuff?
Oh yeah. They were super supportive of it. Like I said, as long as I had good grades, cause I was still in school.
Right.
And it wasn't until I started touring a lot that they were like, whoa,
hold the phone.
Yeah. Hold the phone. When
were you doing? Cause by that time, had you graduated high school before you started like touring, or were you just touring in the summers? Like
it was like senior year.
Okay.
And junior year and senior year, we were going to like Yuma, Phoenix,
whatever was like accessible on a weekend.
Accessible like that. And then that kind of went down. Then we started booking, further legs and going out to Texas and doing stuff like that.
Right.
And then that's when I started kind of like missing out on college. And
that's when the rubber hit the road.
Right. And so my parents were pretty bummed about that. But then I was still doing college like on the road and beforehand, and trying to squeeze it in however I could, getting leave of absences and stuff like that.
What were you just going to like a junior college down there?
I went to San Diego City College.
Oh yeah,
and
sure.
Southwestern College with a major in graphic design and new media. So I loved graphic design. I'd been doing that since my dad got a computer and showed me how to use Page Plus.
Right.
So like any shirt desigins, any album designs, everything, that was all me too.
Dude,
it's
hilarious.
Getting involved in all that.
Yeah, you were just, you are like you're the perfect person for that, because you're just obviously these are all like essential components of obviously a band. And you're just like, I want to take it all, because not only because you're enthusiastic about it, but you want to like learn it for yourself.
Right, of course. And that's kind of always, it was always like, what do we need? Okay, I need to learn how to do that then. Right. And so I'm very thankful for it now, because now I've been doing some of those things for like 15 years or, like I've been in that world mentally for such a long time now that a lot of it just comes second nature. And like, I won't even think about all the things that I'm doing right now. And then I'll take a step back and be like, damn, that's crazy. I'm so glad I learned that. Or like, I'll think back to like a lesson in college that I was like, oh shit, like jumping back into Photoshop recently. I've been working on a tour poster for our upcoming tour.
Right.
And I was like, oh man, how do I do this? And I thought back to one of my college classes and I was like, I remember. Yeah. And it's something that I don't, it's kind of like just tricks to have in my bag. And I feel like by no means am I at the top of the learning, there's always more to learn about everything.
Of course.
So, but I feel like
you have a good enough grasp to be able to obviously do a tour poster for your band.
And it was all those things that I started developing when I was younger, in middle school and in high school, when those kind of graphic design and music and that's when I realized what I wanted to do with my life was make album covers and play in a band and make records and design those records, and then make t-shirts and design cooler t-shirts and cooler merch items and put stuff on lunch boxes and like just think of really random ideas that I don't know.
You wanted to bring to life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I feel like being a musician and being an artist all around, it's important to have those ambitions and kind of let that, you don't really realize that you have that much creativity until the outlet is put in front of you,
Sure.
And you can really like drop your whole brain into it.
Yeah.
And,
put
it all on paper essentially, or on wax, or on
whatever. Whatever medium you're using.
Exactly. Whatever medium.
It's cool to hear that, because it's like, I'm sure obviously you've seen some of either peers or just other people you've toured with, where it's like, to me, the most terrifying thing about watching a person like become a very successful band or play in a successful band is like, well, clearly that's not everything. Like there's a expiration date on every band at some point. And then you look at those people who like literally have no like quote unquote skills outside of the fact of like but like you're fine, dude.
Yeah. Oh, like I think that's why I've never really worried about it or anything like that.
You've never had to,
because I've never really had to think about, I never thought like, oh my God, what if the band's done? If that were to happen, I'll do 100 other things,
I'll figure
it out. Like, cause I just always love being involved in every aspect, from booking to designing to managing to playing.
You have all of the experience and the essentials at the core level to be able to like transition into whatever you want. Because like I said, I'm sure that there's people that you know that you see where it's just like like your transition into quote unquote real life may be tough.
Right.
You may struggle for a while figuring out what you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so then as you obviously had to make that sort of decision to, focus on just obviously being in a band from a full-time perspective, because Lower Definition was never like a full-time band at that, or had you guys transitioned into that?
It was right when I was in college. We signed a deal with Ferret Music,
right.
And we put out our first album, The Greatest of All Lost Arts. And at that point, our band, we had been a band for almost like 6 or 7 years.
Right.
And we had been essentially the same group for 5 of those years, and touring too. So we had all, by the time the record came out, we found out after the record came out that Ferret was going bankrupt.
Yep.
Which was very unfortunate to find out while they were cooing us into a deal.
Of course.
That we were so stoked about, because all of our heroes, from Poison the Well to Every Time I Die to
you guys were you guys were signing right at the time when it was like, Trustkill and Ferret were as huge as it possibly could be, but obviously on the back end, that's when it was just like falling apart.
Right. And so that was unfortunate to us, because we were out trying to support our record, and we kind of weren't getting the tour. I mean, we got a bunch of tours that we really liked and that we felt like were good for us, but then it kind of started to dwindle off, and then our van started breaking down, and tour support came in, the talk of tour support came in, and the unfortunate reality that our label was going bankrupt was kind of like, well, it's not looking good for you guys.
It's not there. Yeah.
And I'm happy though that we were able to put the record out, because I feel like personally it's some of the best work that I've done. And at an early age, where I didn't really know what I was doing, and we were just writing songs and recording that. Now in my mind, I've recorded so many more songs after that, and had so many more instances to learn, what it is to record a song and write a song and stuff like that. So, But
to have something like officially out there in the world, like that's the most exciting feeling of like, this is on a record label. Like this is in my hands. This exists.
Yeah. So that happened in I believe that was in 2007.
Right.
And so we had been a touring band for a while before then. And we didn't have an agent, but my friend who we both know, Dave Shapiro, I've known him since he moved to San Diego from New York.
Right.
And he would, he threw me bones left and right for shows for us. And, I could get you on these 5 shows of this tour because they're one-offs. And I'm like, we'll drive out there.
Right. No problem.
We'll do it, just because, I felt, and we all felt like the exposure was important. And
were your parent, was it a struggle for your parents to understand what you were doing at that point?
Definitely.
Okay.
They were starting to see that it was taking more of my time and more of my attention away from the things that they felt like, to them, they saw me spinning my wheels, which towards the end of when I decided to leave the band, I started to feel that way too, that, the wheels are spinning, that,
you don't feel any momentum.
Dabba doing 110%, and, nobody's listening. Nobody's getting it. Everyone's saying, we don't get it. I'm sorry. We don't understand what you guys are trying to do. You need this, you need that. I'm like, no, we don't need that. We just need somebody to believe in what we're doing.
Right.
And unfortunately, that
you weren't able to rally the troops. Right.
Yeah. And I think that's just, where music was then, and just the time and place that
of course
the record came out. And
it was definitely a weird era where it was like you were trailing off obviously the MySpace hype band days where like they still existed, but it was trailing off in the sense of like, oh, you can't just sign a band because they have a million MySpace plays, because who knows what that will actually like translate to me record sales wise. So it was like that weird era of like that was phasing out, and then bands that might have been signed on that principle alone are phasing out too. So like, and you guys, I would definitely put somewhere in the middle, because you actually did a lot of work, but then you did have a lot of online exposure.
Right. Definitely. And so, it kind of like, I feel like for me, it had ran its course. A couple of the members decided to leave too. And we had been together for such a long time that when those members started to leave, I was like, man,
do I really need to do this?
Yeah.
anymore?
And it was like, it was just a struggle, you know, and like,
Yeah.
you can only struggle for so long. And I love every minute that I spent with them and
Right.
every song that we recorded and every memory that we have. But I, you know, having my parents come down on me a lot, and not to say that they were any influence on my decision, but
Right.
when there's, you know, when everyone's telling you that your wheels are spinning and then you finally realize it, it's kind of like a damn. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, it's a hard thing. I mean, it's a hard thing to say goodbye to.
right. Yeah, definitely. Cause that was the band that we had built from a garage to
Right.
being a nationally touring act that
Of course.
could headline in our own hometown and bring over 1,000 people. And, you know, that for us, that was the only place that we could bring over 1,000
Right.
people, mind you.
Yeah, but
as
still.
much as we tried to play, you know, outside, it just, you know, it just never really happened for us.
Yeah.
And,
So then after Lower Definition, there was obviously, because you of Mice and Men, like you playing with them. When did that start? Was that 2009?
that was 2009.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
so those 2 years, like that, you basically were just kind of like, you were just figuring out what you wanted to do.
Yeah, and we were kind of like on the back end of, you know, once the album came out, then it was like, all right, so our tours are done. What's next? You know, label, let's do this. And then it was like, well, we don't really have anything. Here's some bones here and there, but you know, we
Right.
can't really fulfill the things that we all signed and this and that.
Yeah.
So then I was like, well, I had talked to our manager at the time, and I was just kind of like telling him, you know, like if there's any musicians that are wanting to start something new,
Yeah.
I feel like I just need a fresh start, like a fresh page. I don't want to join a band that's already going. I don't want to, you know,
Okay.
I just
got
want
it.
to, if there's something new come in, or if, you know,
Something exciting. Sure.
yeah, you know, like I just need to reinvigorate myself with something that is fresh, I
Sure.
guess. And so I was put in contact with Austin Carlisle, who's our singer,
Sure.
and via our manager. And I talked to him a little bit, and he said that he had been talking to this guy, Phil Manansala, who's our other guitar player, who I had known from a previous Lower Definition tour because he was touring in A Static Lullaby.
Right.
So we were friends too. And so he was like, yeah, you know, we're wanting to start this band. We've got these 2 demos that, you know, we recorded, but they don't have to be on the album. That, you know, it's not anything set in stone. I want to make a band. We need to make a band. Like, let's do this. So then he moved out to California, and then we started Of Mice and Men.
Sure.
Like brand new, fresh page.
Right.
Here's the studio. Let's start writing the album.
Sure.
And so that was kind of like instigated between all of us, had the same management at the time. And so they kind of helped put us together, and
Sure.
they
made
us
the connections, because there definitely is like that fallout that obviously always happens when bands splinter apart.
Right.
You definitely have your dudes who are the lifers, who are just like, yo, I want to be doing this. Like,
yeah, exactly.
still.
Exactly.
And like not from a sense of like desperation, but just from a sense of like where you're coming from. Like you said, you're just like, I still want to be creative. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we all got together and started making that music, and Rise was involved from the beginning because of Austin's affiliation with Attack.
Sure.
And I had known them for a long time because they had offered Lower Definition a deal, you know, a long time ago. And, but I had kept in touch with them because, you know, I just always keep
You were
in
the
touch
business
with,
guy.
I always
Yeah.
keep in touch with everyone
Yeah.
that we had talked to, you know, and, I never liked burning bridges or anything like that. So it was kind of like I called Craig up and I was like, you know, how's this going to work with Fair and stuff? He's like, dude, don't even worry about it. Well, it's not going to be an issue. You know, it's all
Right.
good. And ultimately, you know, it was, and there was no
legal
problem.
ramifications.
Yeah. Cause you know, at the time, like we weren't anything. And
Right.
you know, at the same time, you know, Lower Definition only had so much
Yeah,
like
of course.
behind their name. So that was kind of already set in stone, and Dave was waiting until he heard some demos to see if he would pick us up to be a
Right.
booking agent, which I was stoked about because I essentially had known our whole team
Right.
that was in place for years before even being in place with them.
Yeah.
So that made me feel
and
comfortable about the
it's-
switch.
Right. And it's interesting too, because a lot of people, you know, I mean, myself included, can throw stones at bands that obviously start with, you know, not only a huge head of steam, but like you said, have a team in place.
Yeah.
Like
I knew how hard that was to get because we barely had a team, you know, like anybody that managed us was kind of like doing us a favor and trying to help us out. Whereas
Right.
we wanted somebody to go and, you know, team up with me and the band and let's spearhead and
Of
you know,
course.
let's crush this.
let's die in
dive
battle
right in.
together.
Yeah, but it was kind of like Lower Definition had never really had that full on like
Right.
team of individuals that were ready to go to bat for the band. And I knew how fortunate of Mice and Men was to have that already in place from the start, because, you know, it didn't come, I feel like it came because of the people that were involved in the group,
of course,
instead of the music of it or anything like that. Like all those people believed in us as individuals enough to be like, wow, so these guys are all making music together. Let's back it and let's put it out. And I think there's a difference between, all right, yeah, we're going to see dollar signs out of this and this and that. Like nobody knew how we were going to do really when we first came out, and we didn't even do very well, like coming out of the gates. Like it was all relative. There was
maybe attention that's placed to you, but there isn't that immediate, there's attention, but there's a difference between attention and success. And I think that's, I'm glad that you put it out there like that, because I definitely think that there's just, like we were talking about before we were on mic, where it was like, there's so many notions where it's just like, people can look at Of Mice and Men and be like, oh dude, fuck that band.
Yeah.
Like,
they've had a handout since the beginning. And it's kind of like, well, that was because we had all been talking to these people for a long time before.
The roads had been paved.
Right. Exactly. And
to where you all ended up.
So then when we started with it, it was like, all right, this is what we've all wanted, was an all systems go entity that everyone is ready to stand behind everything, you know, to get the ball rolling immediately.
Right.
Which is what we had all essentially been waiting for in our other bands and like hoping for and working towards.
Right.
So this was kind of like that fresh start to be able to come in and write music and have it come out on a label and know that
hit the ground running.
Exactly. Right. And so that was, I feel like, you know, we're very fortunate to have had that.
Yeah. Obviously, I mean, the drama and members leaving, like that's been covered in well-trodden territory.
Right.
But the thing that I was interested in, because obviously since you were basically just surrounded by the chaos, were there moments where you were just like, dude, is this even worth it? I mean, not even worth it, like to continue the band, but like, is this worth all of the internal strife that I'm sure you felt?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that comes with, I try to look at things subjectively from like all points of view. So on a lot of the struggles and things that were going on in the band, I wasn't necessarily a part of it, but it, like you said, you know, it's kind of happening around me. So I'm involved by default.
Right.
And I feel like being in a band, you have to deal with personalities, and that's something that you will never not deal with, because it's going to be hard to get four other dudes, or, you know, whoever's touring with you, to get everyone on the same page in order to work towards the common goal.
Of course.
And a lot of people have different ways of getting there and methods of the way that they do things, and it doesn't always mesh. And so I've always known that. So a lot of the times, you know, I'll sit back and like, just kind of like be like, well, damn, you know, like it doesn't really have to do with me in a lot of this, but I do know that the train has to keep moving. You know, like we can't slow down. We're in the middle of a tour right now, and now everyone wants to break up. And, you know, like there's tons of times where we were like, oh shit, are we really going to get through this tour? Like people quit on the road. You know, there's the ups and downs of, we didn't get those early years to get to know everybody, you know? And then if something wasn't working out, you know, a new member would get switched in, and then, or, you know, it was just here and there and everywhere, because we were trying to find ourselves. You know? And I always try and explain it in that sense, as like, we were kind of in the public eye figuring ourselves out through the growing pains, you know?
Of course.
And so for me to be around that, you know, all I'm thinking is the train's got to keep going. Like, we cannot slow down. We have a record to support.
There's something that there's a greater good.
Yeah.
Here.
So like, if you guys can't get along, fucking, who cares? Like, get along with each other. Like, come on. Like, we're on tour. How mad can you be? We're playing music every night, and kids are buying our t-shirts. You know what it's like to play in front of nobody and have nobody buy your shirts? Like,
it's so funny.
I
absolutely, like, you doing that right there. Just like, I close my eyes and I visually see you doing that. And like, and then also just like those moments of just like pure frustration where I'm sure you're just like head in hands, just being like, God, like I'm fine. I get along with everybody.
Yeah.
Like,
right. And there's, you know, there's times where we all didn't get along too. But at the end of the day, I feel like when you're in a band, you have to realize that you're all should be out there for the same reasons.
Yeah.
And if the people aren't, then they don't need to be there. And if you have to beg them to be there, you don't need to beg.
That's
you know, like, you want to be around people that enjoy it and want to, you know, create and not have to deal with all the BS that comes with all that.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's a really important point too, of like, obviously, like we were talking about earlier, where it's like your past experiences obviously inform the knowledge of what you have now,
Yeah,
exactly. the situation that you're in now. So it's like, I think that if you didn't have that perspective, it would be probably a lot harder for you to be like, all right, well, like, let's just trudge through this, or keep a positive attitude.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, that's just something that's the way that I feel about the situation of music and being in a touring band and collaborating with other musicians. Cause at the end of the day, that's what you're doing. And then you're collaborating with them, and then you get in a van together, and then you go and live your dream. And then a lot of the times people forget that that's what they wanted to do. Like that they put themselves there by their own choice. So they're blaming everyone else for the problems that they wanted to be a part of. So it's like, well, you can't, then don't have such a big problem with these things because you wanted to be out here.
No, that is a really important point.
Yeah,
it does, like you said, that idea gets lost. And then when you have to like bring it up to a person, like, oh, like I did do this to myself.
Right,
like,
right.
Something I found interesting, it kind of more in the context of obviously where the band is at right now, where it's like, this is, and when I was doing preparation for the interview, where it's like people have labeled the band like whatever, new metal revival, where it's like, first of all, I've literally never heard of that term. Yeah. I mean, I've heard of new metal, obviously, but like
I've heard of it a lot.
And that's what I found it, because it just came up in more than one interview of the quote unquote traditional sense, where it's oh, your guys' new record, like new metal revival.
Yeah.
I had never heard of that prior to me looking at this stuff. Had you, until like journalists or people started to bring it up?
Honestly, kind of, yeah. Like that's kind of where we started to see it. I believe Austin had said it in one interview that we had been listening to a lot of like Limp Bizkit and Korn and stuff like that, which is a lot of the music that we grew up listening to as well.
Yeah.
And then it all kind of like, as journalism and stuff like that goes, it kind of just got blown out of proportion, where we're like, well, we're not saying that we're trying to revive it or anything. Like, we're just saying that our influences, and I feel like personally, we were always thinking about that kind of stuff when we were writing from the first album to the second album, to the third album. And you could hear all that, the bounciness and the groove, and it's a little more technically metal, like technical metal with the double kicks and stuff like that, less like groove and stuff. But I think once we sat down with a real producer who actually like took us apart and was like, what kind of songs do you guys want to make? Like, what are you trying to achieve here? Like, besides break my neck from all your double kicking and all your cymbals and stuff, he cut into me a bunch, but rightly so. I could take it. It's not, it's not a big deal.
He's not attacking your personality.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. He's challenging our musical ideas and saying, so, like, that's kind of where we started to develop. Well, what do we want to do with this next record? Like, do we want to keep making breakneck speed, like aggressive, right? Or do we want to be more flavorful and have different elements in our music? Well, God, what bands had that? Well, we think back to the bands that were kind of like Incubus, and we think back to like Korn and Limp Bizkit and even Slipknot and Deftones. And, there's that music, when you heard it, it made you feel a certain way. And our music kind of beforehand, it made you feel a certain way, but really you were just kind of like, you're like screaming at me the whole time, and
there's no nuance about this.
Right. And so finding the dynamic in our music was really, I guess, not an homage to nu metal, but the way that you listen to that music, and it's kind of different, and it strikes you, it makes you feel a certain way.
Yeah. And you can take elements from that.
Right. Exactly. And so I feel like I wouldn't say that it's a nu metal that, and like everyone's like, yeah, nu metal's coming back. I just think all those bands now are touring again, and they're making new records.
Well, and plus the timing of that too, where it's just like, you look at whatever, late 90s, early 2000s, musical terms, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Of course it's coming back.
Yeah.
Like in some respects.
Right.
It's the same thing could be said about, whatever, mid to, late 90s, emo music. It's like, of course that's back in favor now.
Yeah. A lot of the music is cyclical like that.
Absolutely.
Like it moves in cycles. And, And I think that we just got with a producer that was really able to bring out the dynamics in our music.
Yeah, for sure.
And challenge our ideas as songwriters and as musicians, and in every aspect, to where we had never really been challenged like that on our prior albums. We were just kind of like, all right, we're going to go record all these songs that we already have written. And, producer, you record us and
Yeah.
we'll do this and we'll
Right. Just engineer us.
Yeah,
That's
just
fine.
exactly. Is what a lot of it was engineering.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
going into this record, when it really like invigorated us to be like, wow, like he's going for real tones and we have to perform the right take and he's not going to quantize and he's not going to do this. And
He's gonna ask us questions about what we want do before we start to track.
Yeah, exactly. And so it really made us think like, this is how the bands that made platinum albums, this is how bands make real music.
Right.
And it got us stoked because we're like, wow, so now we understand what it's like to make music. Let's keep doing this.
Sure. Well, and I'm sure too, it opens you guys up to the idea that obviously you can't expand past beyond, because not disparaging obviously like what Warped Tour is, but a lot of bands feel like that's their ceiling, you know, where it's like, dude, if we're main stage Warped Tour, like that, that like there's nowhere else we can go beyond that. Where it's like you guys definitely have more of a mobility to where it's like, obviously you can tour with Linkin Park. You can do these larger rock based things, which I'm sure is the absolute vision of where you guys want to end up.
Oh yeah. 100%. And it wasn't until we really took a look at everything that we were doing musically. And in order for us to move forward, we can't keep doing the same thing. You have to for us, it was taking the road less traveled because we already knew. I mean, even for this record, we had studio time booked with another producer. Like we already knew what record we were going to go make. And it wasn't until David Bennett came to us and was like, hey, I don't know if anybody's approached you with saying that they hear what you guys can do with your music.
Right.
But I want to produce you guys and I want to make you guys an awesome band.
Right.
And he came with us very humbly and very we were like, holy crap, this is David Bennett.
I guess we should consider this.
And we were like, dude, like nobody's ever come to us and been like, I hear something in your guys' music. I see it in the crowd.
Right.
I see it in your live show. We need to capture this. And it has not been captured yet. And I just got chills saying that because I remember when he came to us in New York and I was like, holy crap, this guy gets it. That's what we've been searching for. That's what our band needs is that challenge to do something that's different and to like find a new
musical avenue.
Work with a new palette of the things that we have been doing on all the other records, as little pieces of paint and then creating new colors with that. I guess.
No, for sure. Well, two last things I wanted to hit on before I left you. Kind of like what I alluded to earlier where it's like, oh, drummers, like, realistically speaking, aren't much in the spotlight. But it's like, when you're looking for interviews of your band, like it's either you or Austin. Yeah. And you're incredibly well spoken.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is that something that you've always I don't know, because I feel like the well spokenness comes with either you were like into reading or like expressing yourself. Like
I did a ton of writing in high school. Okay. I loved writing essays. I loved I guess it was. Well, it would have been like late elementary school into middle school and into high school. Like I loved writing and just reading and being able to express myself appropriately.
Sure.
And my dad really helped with that because he wasn't a native English speaker. So, and my first language was Spanish. So,
really?
Yeah. So
you're technically ESL, English as second language.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so when I was learning English and my mom taught me a bunch of the English too. But when growing up, I would hear the way that my dad spoke and he speaks very eloquently and very precise. So English people can understand him.
Sure.
And he has his accent too, South American accent. But I picked a lot of that up from him because he used the right words and he used words that people wouldn't normally use. And I would pick that up. And when I got into high school, I was doing like AP English and doing all that stuff, and learning how to use my words appropriately. Yeah. And in the right sense. And then with the experience of interviews and writing emails and responding to emails and talking to promoters and doing this and doing that every here and there. You gotta be professional. You gotta be nice. You gotta not look like, yeah. You can't seem like the dumb drummer or, anything like that. And that was always like, I wanted to be able to speak right and to be able for people to when we socialize and when we interact, they're left not feeling like dumber or,
Yeah,
you know, like
yeah, of course.
I don't know. That's how you present it. It's first impressions. It's anything. And
do you speak Spanish regularly now, or is that something?
No,
Okay. That has dropped. Okay.
Well, we used to travel a bunch to Peru when I was younger, like every summer and, for a ton of Christmases to visit our family. But, once I started touring, then I stopped, you know, all my breaks and every time in between, there was no more time for like family
practicing.
Practicing.
Exactly.
And the people that I was around was English speaking, you know, so it's been a really long time since I've had to speak fluent, other than when we went and did a tour in South America, which thankfully recently we went with a Day to Remember, and I saved us in a couple situations.
I can imagine everyone's like, hey, we have one person that can help us out here.
Yeah, Tino, get over here.
Totally.
What's he saying?
Yeah, help us out.
I just broke the sink.
Right.
Our sound guy like stood up on one of the sinks and broke it. And he was like, I do it. I was like,
I'm sorry. Yeah, all right.
I'll talk to this guy. I'm like, lo siento. Like, I'm so sorry. This and that. And it was, at the end, it was all good. But.
Yeah. But you were bailing him out.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to hit on was because obviously when you, coming from where you've come from, and obviously given the platform that you have right now currently, where it's like, you know, people look at each individual member of Mice and Men and are just like, oh, they're like, you guys are mythical gods. Like, you know, I'm just saying from a crowd's projection.
Right. Understandable.
And so it's like, it is one of those things where it's like, there's so much that's projected on you as far as the human is concerned. And where you're just like, cause I mean, you're a dude, like you're sitting right in front of me.
For
like,
sure. Yeah.
You're at my house.
We're hanging.
We're hanging. And so are there things that you kind of like deliberately do and like go out of your way to like just exemplify the fact that you're just like don't put me up on that thing, like, or is it just kind of something that has obviously come naturally to you? Because I'm sure it's a struggle in some respects.
With great power comes great responsibility,
right? And
because we are in the spotlight, some of the things that we do have to think about, but more often than not, you know, like I'm not gonna go tweet about like the dude that. I don't know. I'm not going to go like air out a bunch of dirty laundry on the internet because my fans don't need to hear that. Like, I don't need to be complaining about stuff or, you know, doing anything like that. I mean, you know, that's just one aspect of it.
Right. One random example.
Right. One random example. But realistically, like, I feel like to all of us that the approachability maybe might come naturally, you know, like to be in the spotlight and have people kind of like looking at us. I know at least personally, like, it doesn't really stress me out because I feel like I don't have to be anybody that I'm not.
Okay.
And that's something that I think all of us in the band try and exemplify with the way that we are is, you know, we're 5 kind of random dudes that like doing the same stuff together. And after many years can now all hang out together and have a good time and be best buds.
Right.
You know? And so that translates to being all right, you know, in the public eye. And I feel like when anybody sees that and thinks, you know, like how you were saying, like mythical, like untouchable, like this and that, like when people see me on the street and they come and say, what's up? They're always so surprised with like, wow, you're so nice. And I'm like, who are you meeting? Like, I need to know. Cause I need to meet them and be like, yo, I met some people and you're not keeping it real. Like to me, we have such a huge platform,
right? And
to use it for anything other than like what's real and like what is, I guess, like positivity. And there's a lot of negative shit in the world and there's a lot of stuff going on. And we have songs about that too. But when it comes to like us as individuals, you know, like we're not unobtainable. Like we're just like every super fan that went to the shows because we were those dudes, you know, climbing over people to get the mic and, you know, buying every single one of our favorite bands merch and stuff. We all did that. So it's like we were able to make our dream of being on a stage true. So now we can share that with everyone. Why wouldn't we want to be like, oh, hey, how's it going? Yeah. Have you heard of my band? Obviously. Like, you know, I'll even ask that like, oh, so you've heard of us before. And they go, yeah, we've heard of you.
You're like, that's my normal sort of gut reaction go-to. Like, oh, did you come to see us or did you come to see me?
Yeah. And so I feel like it's for us, we get to keep it honest about it.
Yeah.
And that's something that our fans can really latch onto because we want them to be honest with themselves and they, you know, they need to be able to listen to something that is substantial,
right?
You know, and look at people that are, you know, like us in our position like we were just them 10 years ago.
Yeah.
12 years ago.
Because it's all you guys are trying to do. I mean, from my perception, it's like you were, while there are obviously theatrics in your stage show, like relatively speaking, you don't wear these huge costumes. Like you're illustrating a point of like we're a band.
We're just rocking out. Yeah, we're just rocking out to our songs.
Right.
And that's something that's cool. And I'm happy that our band is at a point now where people can see that, and we don't need all the extra, like frilly things and all that stuff is, I don't know. Right. It's kind of like, it's never really been kind of what we're about.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is interesting. I like the way you're putting it as far as like, you're just trying to be, ultimately you're trying to be authentic with yourself, which will ultimately then reflect on your interactions.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly perfect
with people.
Yeah. Straight up. Because I mean, you shouldn't have to hide, who you are or what anything for anything, and right. Maybe that's why a lot of rock stars get bad press or like are in the headlines for, negative things, is because that's probably how they feel all the time. And
right.
We don't feel that way all the time.
Right.
And we feel very fortunate to be where we're at. So we're going to reflect that in our demeanors and the way that we are.
Yeah. No, it's perfect. Well, it's a good thing that you were doing that. Cause like I said, it is funny that still is perpetuated. I mean, honestly, on every level where it's like, if you're a band that plays in front of 100 people, you still get to sometimes those weird interactions of people like being like, oh, I came to talk to you, like all bashful. And it's just like, what? Like, dude, there's 100 people here. Like,
yeah, for sure.
We're cool. Like, why do you think this is? And
I love that interaction. And I feel like that's something that being a musician and stuff is like, that's the best form of compliment, because, you write the music and you have the song and you play the song every night and, right. That's your song. You love it.
Yeah.
But then when somebody else can love the music too and have enough guts to come up and talk to you or whatever, because they've only heard your music and seen you on the internet or something like that.
Right.
I at least personally, like, I'll try and make them feel comfortable, because I know how weird that must be, because I was that kid too that was like,
of course,
hey. I probably even was like, hey Ray, like back in the day, like, hey dude, I freaking love Taken, man, like this is sick, we're like playing together, like,
yeah,
because I remember being that, and it was meeting individuals like yourself and stuff that really helped me be the person in the spotlight that I am now, because when the fans come up and talk to me, I want to make sure that they know that we're cool. Like if you love our band, I love you. You're supporting,
of course,
my art, and you're supporting what we believe in.
And you never know that it's like, because ultimately I think what everybody wants out of this sort of independent music scene, because I mean, you even though you guys have reached massive levels of success, you've come from that scene. So
we're still on an independent label.
Absolutely.
We're still independently managed, and like it's all
kept in house,
right? Yeah. And that's something that we feel like is a perfect situation for our band to be in, because we're still so much involved in every single thing that happens from Mice and Men.
Right.
So like anything that you see of anything, like we've all been working.
Your hands have been on it. Right?
Yeah, and because we want to make sure that our fans are getting what represents us. And how
not just like filtered through your lens.
Right. Exactly. And, so
yeah,
we're very fortunate to have that situation where we can be so hands-on and, be at a label that has 3 people that are on my speed dial, and I could call and be like, yo, I just had this cool idea to do it.
Right.
Done. 2 hours later, it's like, here's this, here's that, perfect. And, having that type of involvement really helps, because we get to create the most for our fans, because now we're stoked and we get to do cool, like, 24 karat gold freaking seashell necklaces from our album, and we can do cool flexi disc perks on our packages, and we get to do all these cool things that we've wanted to do for a long time, because our home team, our team believes in us,
right?
And so we get to give the fans the best experience at the end of the day too,
right?
Because it's a direct reflection of the ideas that we have.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I don't see our band ever losing that.
Right.
But I mean, I don't see our band ever losing that. I mean, as long as I'm here.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I know I'm going to be the same dude.
Right, exactly.
So I know I'm not changing with the way I feel about it.
No, you've as far as I've known you, you've always been the same dude. So. Well, I really appreciate you hanging out.
Thanks, Ray.
This was enjoyable.
Definitely.
Good. So there you go. Like I said, I was hoping that this conversation was able to paint a broader picture of what it takes to finally kind of, be in a band that is successful, doing it, touring, identifying with people, connecting with people. Because that ultimately is why we're all drawn to this music scene, Just because a 14-year-old boy or girl is in love with a band like Of Mice and Men, and you may look at it and be like, I can't identify with anything that they have going on. That doesn't make it any less authentic, because people are actually having connections with this and being emotionally moved by this music. So, again, thank you to Tino for hanging out with me and he took an Uber over to my house. Like, he doesn't have a car, so he's like, I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to take an Uber to practice. Like, that is very kind of him. So, anyways, the producer, as always, is Tom Richfield. Pray to the internet gods that they fix the internet in his neighborhood, because he's been having a lot of problems. And I know it causes him stress, causes me stress, so let's go the UK internet. Let's go ahead and rally around Tom's neighborhood. And I can't wait to just bring out all of these awesome shows that I have coming up. Each week it's a crescendo, and it's all building towards the month of April, the show's 3-year anniversary. I've got some amazing guests, and I can't wait to share them with you. So until next week, be safe, everybody.